In this installment, while crossing a milestone in my classic collection, I find a few fun faces freshening up familiar shows. I encounter Suburbia's seamy underside in the quirky time travel contemplation Donnie Darko, Dirk gently and claws brighten my current collection, and, in what I've been watching, TNT launches the period epic Alienist, and Samantha Bee tries to apologize to everyone. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on video, Fuzzy Hero.
Getting this out of the way right off the bat, I am now cataloging my third binder of DVDs. That's my third of 12 of these things, so I've absolutely got a good long ways to go, but as of disc 418, I'm into a new binder. Given that I'd technically been working my way through my last binder since at least 2012, off and on, to put it in the nicest possible way, this one will probably provide me with a better progress meter, assuming no new thing comes up where I set it aside and return to it again 5 years later.
Taking care of some old business.
And slowly, it's too nice a job to rush. Confession time. I basically listened to past episodes of this podcast over and over, especially the last dozen episodes or so, in part for quality control, but mostly because I just love to hear myself talk. Oh, no, sorry, should have made sure to make sure you were all sitting down first for that little bombshell. I noticed this especially when I reran episode 18, my last installment, but oh my god, did I have a bus to catch? Well, the past few episodes I've recorded while standing, which I do think presents better diaphragmatic control, but also tends towards a sense of urgency in my presentation. To help counter this, I've hung a big sign on the wall behind my monitor that says, "Slow down." Hopefully I can weave some evenness into this process without bringing a metronome into it. Well, except for one part coming up, but yeah, that'll make sense when we get to it. Otherwise, we're just relaxing, chatting about homemade DVDs here, no big whoop. I'll try to tell my voice. Oh, and while the huge revelations are dropping here, I recorded the State of the Union address this week, but haven't watched it yet. I don't imagine I'll be watching the superb Owl Lie-Dee-Die either, though I'm absolutely looking forward to JT's halftime show. I suspect if we're watching anything live Sunday evening, it'll probably involve puppies. Rather, Ralph will be out visiting friends next weekend, so I'm going to take the opportunity to dump the DVR. I've been building up another cache of movies and shows that mostly only I want to watch, so it's a good chance to boil off some of that stuff. Also, tracking from my discussion in episode 17, I recently encountered the pilot episode of Breaking Bad, which aired January 20th, 2008, just a little over 10 years ago, which, yeah, is why AMC is re-airing the series. So, based on that, I've been able to track and catalog so far 4 episodes in my classic collection, so for those keeping score, that's 4 episodes down, 42 yet to go, and once I'm able to bring them all in, that'll be 16 in my current collection for the complete series of 64 episodes. Looking forward to it. Oh, and I saw where TNT is starting over with the pilot episode on Supernatural, so I just said screw it. Bit the bullet, splashed out $20 for season 12. I've got like a dozen episodes of season 13 in my DVR, and I absolutely want to watch them, but not before I watch season 12, so yeah, Amazon said they should be here shortly, and I'll just take it from there. Right now, it's Saturday afternoon. It's snowing here in Bismarck. I bundled up, cleared my sidewalk, and made my way over to the City Brew in Bismarck to organize some thoughts about what I've been watching lately, including my Friday night feature, a speculative think piece called Donnie Darko.
Friday night feature.
In 2001, there was a disaster. Late in the evening of October 2nd, a jet engine crashed into a suburban home, destroying an upstairs bedroom. Fortunately, there were no fatalities because the teenage boy who would otherwise have been asleep in that bedroom, Donnie Darko, had been summoned forth by Frank, a tall, dark, demonically grinning rabbit, to a golf course. Frank prophesied the world would end in the next 4 weeks, specifically 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds. Donnie Darko woke up to a couple of golfers playing through and returned home to the scene of the disaster. Over the course of the next 4 weeks, he lived his life more intensely than he had done heretofore. Fueled by repeat visits by this waking spectral vision, psychological investigations, and hypnotherapy, Donnie Darko, played by a low-key Jake Gyllenhaal, plays out... Is there a spoiler alert on a nearly 2 decades old film? A sort of It's a Wonderful Life in reverse, first helping Grandma Death avoid a car crash. She spooks him out with the whispered phrase, "We all die alone." Frank persuades him to destroy the water main and flood the school, which leads him to a conversation with Gretchen, who quickly signs on as his girlfriend. Frank also persuades him to burn down the home of Jim Cunningham, a motivational speaker, which emergency response reveals Jim is a pedophile and he's arrested. A dance team coordinator who was a huge fangirl of Pedo Jim is now unavailable to take Darko's sister's dance team to a competition, so Donnie's mom is roped in to do so. The competition ends a little early, and Donnie's mom returns early on the Red Eye, October 31st, and is flying over their home as the countdown prophesied hits 0. A freak time travel tornado funnels the jet engine into Donnie's bedroom October 2nd, this time killing him. Well, regardless of whether his mom was on the flight or not, flight schedules being what they are, there'd been a jet engine over Donnie's house the morning of October 31st, and a time travel tornado is quite the freak accident. Though the science is sound, according to a book on loan from his science teacher, The Philosophy of Time Travel by Sister Roberta Sparrow, aka Grandma Death, that time travel is simply any vessel through any wormhole. Except, well, for basically this show and probably Lost, airplanes and tornadoes are reasonably stable phenomena in this universe. Otherwise, wow, would it be an unreliable means of getting from place to place. But that's way too much analysis on the means. What we witnessed in this movie was a month in the subjunctive case. What might have happened in this small suburban universe had Donnie Darko's world not ended, if he had been influenced by a dark bunny man hallucination that saved his life that wild night of October 2nd, that drew him to seemingly random acts which in turn opened new potentialities for him and those around him. Donnie found love, healing wounds of mistrust in the wake of Gretchen's family drama. The revelation that he was the object of affection for a lonesome heart rejected, that some vaguely Vonnegutian motive force proceeding from the center of his chest drew him to a handgun in his parents' room, which figures into a later conflict, that his act of arson was able to bring a pedophile to justice. Potentials the movie explored and slammed shut in the destructive final scene. An entire movie, a month in the life that we viewers got to experience with this crazy, quirky character that now would never be. Donnie Darko isn't a time travel movie so much as it serves as a speculative think piece. I think it tells us that any life can be endlessly significant, that good can proceed from seemingly destructive acts, or at least reinforces the concept that it's an ill wind that blows no good, and regardless of when or how our lives end, we should just try to live our lives to the fullest. Advice from dark, scary bunnies or no. As an aside, I'm sitting in the coffee shop right now writing this up. I've been here for hours, and here over the speakers they're playing Gary Jules' Mad World, a song featured in that movie. And I think it's kind of funny, I think it's kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. Mad World, Mad World. Synchronicities all over the damn place. I knew this installment was going to be kind of epic.
Diving into the classic collection.
Anyway, as I mentioned above, this past week marked a milestone of some significance as I physically broke out a new binder of DVDs to continue this cataloging effort, and I've truly enjoyed the discoveries I've been making. Along with the Sundance presentation of Donnie Darko, I found where AMC aired a wild psychological thriller from the late 70s starring Anthony Hopkins and a ventriloquist dummy called Magic. It's pretty much exactly what you think it is. Found near the beginning of this new binder was the joyously period crime epic L.A. Confidential from Turner Classic Movies. Other movies that surfaced along the stretch of discs include the neatly complementary back-to-back airings of Shaun of the Dead on Comedy Central and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on Sci-Fi. From HBO and broken up across 3 discs, I've got the espionage exploratory Breach from 2007, in which Ryan Felipe, as an up-and-coming agent, seeks to investigate Chris Cooper as his boss, Robert Hansen, for acts of treason. 2007, we were all so innocent. I cataloged the Eileen Wuornos biopic Monster from 2003. I also saved the 1986 presentation of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer off IFC, detailing the life and crimes of Henry Lee Lucas. And just before I put this installment together, I saw where I'd archived John Waters' outlandish 1974 effort, Female Trouble, off the Sundance Channel. So that almost by definition tracks this collection from the divine to the ridiculous. So I'll close out this listing with a study in crashing cars, shifting perspectives, and vehicular manslaughter, IFC's presentation of 1114 from 2003, and Morgan Freeman's steady, calm narration of The March of the Penguins from 2005 on the Science Channel. Quite a range. Transitioning to the episodes I encountered for this installment, I just noticed I cataloged the Season 2 Psych episode titled Shaun and Gus of the Dead, not too long after the Simon Pegg Shaun of the Dead comedy, a serendipitous arrangement, or, given the fair popularity of the comedic UK send-up of Dawn of the Dead and the main characters' names in that comic crime series, plus the mummy-centric storyline, a reasonably predictable reference. Mostly, I was noticing as I cataloged these episodes, I was encountering such wonderful cameos. When Bess Armstrong from My So-Called Life showed up in an episode of Boston Legal simultaneously as a suspect in spousal homicide and spontaneous love interest and client for William Shatner as bombastic lawyer Denny Crane, I began noticing I'd been encountering a few cameos recently and began watching for them. As it happens, Jennifer Lawrence made an appearance in an episode of Medium. Well, a couple of them, actually, according to IMDb, playing an unrelated role in a 2007 episode before appearing in Season 4 at the age of 17 as a young version of psychic Alison Dubois. Howie Mandel appeared as a charismatic figure in the Monk episode Mr. Monk Joins a Cult. Barry Bostwick appeared in Ugly Betty as an attorney in Odor in the Court. Boston Legal brought character actor extraordinaire Jer Burns in to present a B-story defendant in Roe v. Wade, the musical, and did it again with Scott Bakula as opposing counsel and flickering love interest for Candice Bergen as Shirley Schmidt. Also, Murph brought Rosie O'Donnell in to recur as Dawn Budge in the Rachel Ben Natan episode of Nip Tuck, and in the telenovela Flambe that was the Psych episode titled Lights, Camera, Homicidio. Seriously, they re-recorded the opening credits in Spanish for that episode. Warehouse 13 fans got to experience another side of Saul Rubinek as a fun and feckless producer. Or at least we do now in the timey-wimey universe of homemade DVD archives where Psych and Warehouse 13 are both solidly positioned in our rearview mirrors. And I experienced an unexpected cameo of my own. I'd recorded a scrap of a Colbert Report from January in 2008, where Stephen was donating his somewhat silly Matryoshka-esque portrait for posterity. I was like, not the sort of clip I'd normally archive, but what the heck, it's on a DVD in this collection, number 412, I'll totally catalog it. I let it run through Stephen's ordeals of first getting rejected from the Smithsonian, trucking it over to the National Portrait Gallery, then with a few reactions from gallery patrons, and who should I encounter but the beautiful, smiling face of Cece Nucker, dear friend and former arts correspondent, the Martha to my George in our 2011 production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, beaming as her mother and best friend, Constance Ashworth, gushed over the significance of that painting and its centrality to their even visiting the gallery in the first place, which I'm certain her tongue was firmly in cheek, but in that it all but guaranteed its inclusion in the show, I'm so glad that she and her friend and co-interviewee Bruce Blackistone played along. I forgot to mention it last time, but my current collection is tracking into episodes I started archiving near the beginning of this podcasting effort, which has been interesting to me as I weigh which pieces to discuss. Technically, I tracked into this set of discs under what I've been watching when I started this podcast last June, sometime after archiving all of Supernatural Season 11 and determining that once I'd cleared out my DVR, I'd have the necessary free time to focus on cataloging and podcasting. Well, it's unusual for the DVR to be completely empty, especially now that I've built up a good backlog of Supernatural Season 13 and Breaking Bad Season 5 episodes to watch, along with movies I always record and mean to watch, but which then sit there until I have free time, which, I never actually seem to have, and along with current series I'm paying attention to like American Crime Story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, Waco, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, The Magicians, and Grownish. Such a good series. Without even trying, I manage a backlog in the 60 to 70% full range. Next weekend is a good bet for clearing some of that out. For now, here's what I've been encountering.
Current collection.
I found for one thing that I had recorded a feature-length graphic novel called Sucker Punch, which was an eye-popping explosion of lurid, gripping imagery that explored the mental state of a teenage girl who'd lost everything at the hands of her abusive stepfather, who had her institutionalized, where she envisioned her world as a burlesque nightclub interspersed with wartime action sequences, espionage, and escape fantasies, peppered with villains and fatalistic storylines that track to dizzying and whiplash conclusions. Sucker Punch was a B-movie thrill ride, but a high-concept one that I thought mostly succeeded, and I'm glad I encountered it. I closed out the 10th season of Doctor Who, the first season of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, and through to the towering third season conclusion of Fargo, a seriously wild ride. I encountered the series premiere of Preacher, Claws, Will, and The Gong Show, and I caught Cyndi Lauper's 2016 performance on Austin City Limits. So much fun. For movies, I caught Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows from 2011 on AMC, the IFC presentation of Stanley Tucci and Michael C. Hall in Peep World, the 2003 Tim Burton production of Big Fish on Sci-Fi, the TBS presentation of 2010's Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, and 2013's Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Sea of Monsters on Sci-Fi, as well as 2011's Bridesmaids on Bravo. And this was interesting heading into what I've been watching, but as I archived my Season 5 episodes of Nip Tuck, I encountered a few promos for the Courtney Cox FX project Dirt, which featured Boys Wanna Be Her, the song that became the theme song for Samantha Bee's Full Frontal. Blew my mind, considering the prevalence of the verb to be in that song. Boys wanna be her, girls wanna be her, boys wanna be her, I wanna be her. I was totally hearing it as celebrating Samantha Bee's name and having been written special for the show. Turns out the song, written by Peaches, was released over a decade ago in the fall of 2006, and along with the Dirt promo, has made all kinds of media appearances, according to Wikipedia. Gotta say, it feels like it found a truly fitting home as Ms. B's theme song.
What I've been watching.
Samantha Bee's Full Frontal inspired me to risk copyright infringement a second time recently with a rapid-fire listing of purportedly everything the president has done wrong inside of 2-week period, for which her staff attempted a worldwide full frontal apology race for everything that she said President Trump did wrong in the 2-week period between January 10th and January 24th, with stops in Mexico, Washington, D.C., New York, Atlanta, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Indiana, and all of Africa. So, once again, in case you looked away for a second and missed it, and with full credits to Samantha Bee and her writing staff, here are apologies for Donald Trump. Calling the Russian investigation a witch hunt, arresting 21 workers on a massive ice raid on 7-Elevens, mangling the English language even more than usual, golfing on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, ending temporary protection status for 200,000 Salvadorians, using DACA as a bargaining chip for a border wall, holding the fake news awards, withholding a hurricane emergency loan for Puerto Rico, asking if the U.S. needs more Haitians, lying to carrier workers about keeping more jobs in the U.S., falsely claiming that Mexico is the most dangerous country on earth, approving the death penalty for federal cases, criticizing the judicial branch on the DACA ruling, then appealing repealing it, calling Dianne Feinstein sneaky Dianne Feinstein, making it easier for banks to redline poor minority communities, pledging to take a strong look at libel laws, reaffirming the Paris Accords is a very bad deal, exempting only Florida from its offshore oil drilling expansion, allowing states to add work requirements as a condition for Medicaid, accusing the FBI of using intel to influence the election, criticizing FISA before remembering he supports it, bashing crooked Hillary, criticizing Obama for selling an embassy in London for peanuts, calling some 55 African nations what he did, dragging Norwegians into his racial rant, sabotaging a bipartisan government funding compromise, threatening to leave the Iran deal, calling Michael Wolff mentally deranged, golfing while Hawaiians panicked over a false ballistic missile alert, lying about his comments in a Wall Street Journal interview, calling Senator Dick Durbin Dickie Durbin, falsely claiming his African-American approval rating doubled, defunding Palestinian refugee aid programs, releasing a misleading report linking immigrants to terrorism, attacking Senator Jeff Flake for criticizing him, moving to bar Haitians from seasonal work visas, shutting down the government, imitating the Prime Minister of India's accent, mansplaining the Women's March, requesting $0 for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, installing Mick Mulvaney as acting director of that bureau, allowing healthcare workers to refuse abortions and treatment to transgender patients, making America picture him getting spanked by a copy of Forbes magazine, speaking at the March for Life rally, appointing a racist, sexist, and anti-LGBT chief of external affairs to the Corporation for National and Community Service, making it easier for states to defund Planned Parenthood, allowing for the legal surveillance of all non-U.S. citizens, and some U.S. ones too, releasing ads saying Democrats are complicit in murders committed by undocumented immigrants, shutting down at least 5 discrimination cases brought to the Department of Education by transgender students, delaying funding for reproductive health services, allowing the EPA to lessen legal limitations for chemical companies, planning to slash the budget on the Office of National Drug Control Policy, placing tariffs on solar energy imports, changing the White House voicemail to blame Democrats for the government shutdown, requesting records of all Texans with Hispanic surnames, urging Republicans to take the nuclear option to end the Senate stalemate, demanding that Mexico pay for the border wall, screwing Melania out of a trip to Switzerland, calling Chuck Schumer crying Chuck Schumer, blaming Samsung for missing texts between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, and asking Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe who he voted for in the 2016 general election. And people complain about our do-nothing leadership. That was so many things! Asked why she made them try to do that, to apologize for all of those things, Samantha Bee said, "I thought if we all really focused and worked hard, we could bring a little bit of hope back into this terrible, terrible world." Well, there was never any real hope of that happening, but hey, at least some of the problems were identified and articulated, yes? Great job, you guys! Also, caught the premiere and first couple of episodes of The Alienist on TNT, which, as it turns out, has been a reasonably faithful adaptation of Caleb Carr's work by the same name. The world they create appears faithful to late 19th century New York, as presented in the atmospheric opening credits, backtracking familiar scenes, architecture, and landmarks into the past. A serial killer is loose in New York, targeting child prostitutes, young boys dressed as girls, butchering them obsessively and leaving them more and more openly, almost willing the police to catch them. The police are not interested in the victims of these crimes, however, dismissing the victims and brutalizing their families, lest they call for justice in their time of loss. The show has reorganized the players somewhat for greater dramatic impact, and the pace of this piece is much quicker than in the book. As of the second episode, the team is on the cusp of opening their investigative offices, which, if memory serves, took a quarter of the book to establish. Well, it's a limited series, so I guess they need to move things along pretty quick. And just a note, I love Dakota Fanning and have done since she was mostly 2 giant bespectacled blue eyes in I Am Sam. But where Jim Broadbent is entirely at home in the 19th century, Ms. Fanning should take a moment to immerse herself. Blatant sexism here, since as soon as a guy puts on a string tie, he's essentially there. Fanning has more costuming to fight with. When we encounter her in her strictly starched shoulder poofs, the reality is that if you work in an office all day, your dress relaxes to your body. Part of her character is a bristling rejection of the sexism in her environment as the first and only female employee in the police department, and I get that. But she's not herself new, and every interaction with the male officers can't seem like her sexual harassment training video. There's stuff that she's going to have made her peace with, and stuff, yes, that's way over the line, and quite along with learning how to move in these stultifying costumes in which she finds herself, she needs to find the right level of seething outrage for this character. For instance, the officer exposing himself to her in one scene while relieving himself in the main office. that's bad. The officer brushing an eyelash from her cheek and inviting her to blow it away for luck, well, that's just an interaction any woman might face in any environment of the day, so staring at him and holding her breath as if to take heated umbrage before marching to her typewriter and pounding out Octothorpe Me Too, that's a bit much for that scene. Also caught the series premiere and follow-up of the Paramount Network, renamed from Spike TV, of Waco, tracking the events of the early Clinton administration, jackbooted thugs, and government overreach into the affairs of a sweet and cuddly bunch of misfits in Waco, Texas. Following on the heels of the tragic Ruby Ridge standoff, federal law enforcement took a look at what appeared to be a gun-happy cult in Waco, Texas, led by David Koresh, charismatic leader of the Branch Davidians, who were, yes, more than a little bit unorthodox, and not everyone was super-duper thrilled with sharing their wives with this guy, despite it being God's will as revealed to, hey, the guy doing their wife now, while they themselves took celibacy oaths. Federal investigators moved in next door as ranchers and weren't remotely convincing, and then the media caught wind of life in the compound, and as of the end of the second episode, enforcement agents were rolling on in to do their very best, what's all this then? As presented in the first couple episodes, life at the compound was jolly and light. All the guys were spiritually insightful and intelligent. Koresh is just a big fun My Sharona playing goof. All the kids were happy, the biggest punishment being spoonfuls of ice cream, and everyone floating along as being part of God's great plan. Which, hey, I'm sure that's exactly what it was like before the federal government stopped in and wrecked everything and the whole thing blew up in a gigantic firestorm. It feels to me like this story is being told from a point of view, and I'll be keeping an eye on that as well. But it's certainly an interesting presentation, so yep, I will keep on watching it. And that's pretty much the highlights for this one. Thank you for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at videofuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes of this podcast at Apple Podcasts and videofuzzy.libsyn.com. Feedback is always appreciated, and you can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my Video Fuzzy page on Facebook. For Video Fuzzy, I'm Terry J. Amon. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on Video Fuzzy.